We continue now at the top of Daf Pechesam and Beis Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 88b. On the previous summit, the Mishnah listed the liquid measures in the Beis HaMikdash. One of them is the Revius Halug, the quarter of a lug. And on the previous summit, Rebbe asked, why is it that the quarter lug needs to be anointed? If you're going to say it's for the quarter lug of oil that is used in the purification process of the Mitzorah, that can't be because chutzu, that actually takes place. That's the first step of the purification process, and it takes place outside of the Azar. It actually takes place outside of the city walls, and therefore there certainly is no need to sanctify that water. V'i Nazir, and if you're going to say it's for the quarter lug of oil for the loaves of the Nazir, but that can't be either. Lechem Nazir b'shchitas ayil hu dekadish, the lechem of the Nazir, the loaves of the Nazir, they are actually sanctified with the slaughtering of the ayil, the slaughtering of the ram, and so that cannot be the need for the Revius Halug measure. And so the Gemara continues and answers, Amar le Rabbi Chia said to him, Sheboha yamoded l'chavise kohen gadol, they actually use the Revius Halug measure to measure out the oil for the Chavise Kohen Gadol. That's the mincha of the Kohen Gadol. It's Revius Shemen l'chol chala v'chala. It was a quarter lug of oil for every loaf. And the Gemara continues, Kari Aleh, he referred to him, meaning Rebbe cited the following verse in reference to Rabbi Chia. The pasuk says, Me eretz merchak ish atzasi. It says that from a distant land, the man of my counsel. The idea over here is that Rabbi Chia came from Bavel, he came from far away, and he gave this solution to the problem. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Chatzi lug mahay meshamish. What was the Chatzi lug? What was the half lug measure? What was that used for? The Mishnah went on to say that it's a half lug of water for the sota and a half lug of oil for the carbon toda. And the Gemara says, Yosef, Rebbe was sitting v'kakashali. He asked the following: Chatzi lug lama nimshach. Why did that Chatzi lug? Why did that have to be anointed? Isota. If you're going to say again, it's for the sota, for the half lug of water for the sota. V'chichulin hu detzrichi lekadusha. Is that water of the sota? Is it non-sacred? That now it needs to be sanctified? Mayim Kedoshim Ksiv, it actually is written that it's Mayim Kedoshim, it actually is already sanctified. That water came from the Kior, so it was already sanctified. And Itod, and if we're talking about the loaves for the carbon toda, meaning the oil for those loaves of the carbon toda, Lachme Toda, B'shchitas Toda, Hudakachi, the Lachme Toda, the loaves of the Toda are actually sanctified through the slaughtering of the carbon toda. And so therefore, again, that would not be necessary. That's not a reason to anoint the half lug measure. And the Gemara continues, Amar Lei Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Shimon Rebbe said to him, he said to his father Rebbe, Chatzi lug shemen l'chol ner v'ner. They used the half lug in order to divide out the half a lug of shemen that would be used for each lamp of the menorah. Amar lo, he said to him, Ner Yisrael, candle of Israel, kachoya. That indeed is the answer to this question. And we will take a look at two tosis over here. Ila sota chulin. If you're going to say it's for the waters of the sota, so is that chulin bitmiya? This is a question. V'chi chulin hava hamayim, are the waters, are those chulin, are those non-sacred sheyei tzarech lekachin, that they need to be sanctified? V'hamayim kedoshim ksiv. It's written that it already is mayim kedoshim. V'yaminim b'sifri. We say in the sifri, ein kedoshim elishin eskachu b'kir. What does it mean? It's mayim kedoshim. It's kedoshim in the sense that it was already sanctified in the kiyur, in the basin. So alma kvar kitchulu. So you see that it's already sanctified. And Tosas asks him, Tomer, if you're going to ask the following question. V'aparishas b'perakam, I explained in the first parak, the achash and eskachu b'klisharis, once something is sanctified in klisharis, lo mesiminan l'chlichol, we don't put it into a non-sacred vessel, mishum demigni meal, so that's not appropriate, and so therefore over here, maybe that's what's going on with the waters of the sota. Maybe they still need to be put into a sanctified vessel, and that's why this vessel, that's why the chatzi lug needs to be sanctified, and in fact, that actually is the explanation by the oil for the chavisin of the Kohen Gadol. Tosa say earlier, that's why they need the quarter lug vessel to be sanctified, even though they actually are sanctified earlier, that oil, but again, it shouldn't be put into a non-sacred vessel if it's already sanctified. And so, can't that be the same thing with regards to the sota water? And Tosa's answer via Shlomo, we can answer Dahani Mili B'Davar HaKarv L'Mizbeach. This rule that once it's nitzkadshu in a klisharis, it cannot be put into a klichol, that's something that's going to be offered on the Mizbeach. But if it's not going to be offered on the Mizbeach, then that is not a concern. And the second Tosis over here, Ner Yisrael Kachoya, he refers to him as candle of Yisrael, and indeed that is the answer. Kachoya, Kanu v'perak sheni de Erchin. So Tosis say over here, and also in the second parak of Erchin, Kari lei Ner Yisrael, he refers to him as Ner Yisrael, Gabe Maisa v'osa Rebbe Tisha Chaserin v'nira Chodesh Bizmano. There it had to do with Rosh Chodesh. Umefarish Harav Rabbeinu Chaim, and Harav Rabbeinu Chaim explains why is it that Rabbi Shimon Berebi in these incidents incidents is referred to as Ner Yisrael, Mishum Da'ayri B'midi Da'ora, since the Gemara is dealing with a topic related to light, could go in Hacha, like over here, B'neiros, we're talking about the lamps of the menorah, V'hasaman over there, B'lavana, with regards to the moon, and so therefore that's why the complement that is used is Ner Yisrael. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rebbe. Rabbi Yochanan says that Rebbe says, Ner Shekav, so let's say one of the lamps of the menorah goes out, means to say that it goes out early, and Nidashin Hashem and Nidashin Hapsila, if when it goes out early, the oil becomes filled with ash, or the wick itself turns into ash, so then Ketzad Osa, what does he do? Meitiva, what he has to do is he has to clean it out, Vinosin Boshemen, and then put in oil, Umadlika, and then relight it so that it will light for the rest of the night. And the Gemara continues, Yosef Rabbi Zreika v'kami boile. Rabbi Zreika was sitting and he asked the following question, Kishu nosein b'shemen, when he puts in oil now, he's going to put in oil now again to refill it in the middle of the night. Kemida rishona, does he put it in according to the first measure, in which case it's going to burn much longer now than the other lamps of the menorah? O kemoshe chasra, does he just replace the amount of oil that went missing? And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Pshita, it is obvious, the Kemida rishona, he has to use the original measure of oil. The ikamashe chasra, if he's just going to replace what went missing. So Minah Yodina and Ma'ichisar, how are we going to know exactly what's left to replace? V'chitema de Meshayerle, and if you're going to say that he measures it, Imkain Sheva Midos, if you're going to say, we said that there are 7 liquid measures in the Beis HaMikdash, Nafish Lu Midos Tuva, there's going to be many more measures that are going to be needed for these situations. And so therefore, Rabbi Yirmiyah argues it must be the full measure of the half a lug that's used to replace the missing oil. And the Gemara continues, Kari Aleh, Rabbi Zreika now compliments Rabbi Yirmiyah with the following pasuk. This is a pasuk in Tehillim, V'hadarcha tzlach rechav al dvar emes v'yan v'tzedek. And with your splendor succeed and ride for the sake of truth and righteous humility. And Rashi Ksaviat explains, Imkain v'hadorcha v'chidudcha. We read the word v'hadorcha as v'chidudcha, as your sharpness, kilomar mechudadata, means to say that you're very sharp in answering this question. Dachi darshinim in Mesechet Shabbos. This is what we darshan in Mesechet Shabbos. V'hadorcha tzlach rechav. That pasuk, what's it referring to? Elu shnei talmidei chachamim shemechadedin zeh zeh b'halacha. This refers to 2 talmidei chachamim who sharpen one another in halacha. And the Gemara continues, Itmar Nami was stated as well. Amar Rabbi Avo, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Avo says that Rabbi Yochanan says, V'yamri lo, some have the version, Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rabbi Chanina, Amar Rebbe, that Rabbi Abba says, that Rabbi Chanina says, that Rebbe says, Ner shekavsa, if the lamp of the menorah, one of the lamps goes out, Nidashin Hashem and Nidashin Hapsila, and the oil, it becomes filled with ash, or the wick becomes ash. Ketzad Osa, what does he do? Meitiva, he cleans it out. V'nosin b'shem and Kemida Rishona, he puts in oil according to the original measure, Umadlik, and he lights it in that fashion. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Huna B'rei Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Sheshes. Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehuda, says that Rav Sheshes says, Ner shebamikdash, the lamps in the Beis HaMikdash, shel parakim hava. They were shel parakim. Shel parakim means essentially that they were flexible, they were able to be moved. The menorah really was all one, it was all one solid block of gold, but the point of shel parakim is they were able to be moved, those lamps of the menorah, those branches, in a way that they would be able to be cleaned. Kasavar, he holds, kiksiv, when it's written in the pasuk, kikar, when it says a talent of gold, and it's all made from 1 kikar of gold. Umiksha, and again also miksha, that's the same idea, 1 solid block of gold. Amenorah vinei roseh ksiv, that's written with regards to the menorah itself, and the neiros, and the lamps, it's all made of 1 solid piece of gold, and so therefore, if it's all 1 solid piece of gold, kevan demi boy hatava, since it needs to be cleaned out, ilav de prakim hav, if it wasn't de prakim, again, if it wasn't flexible in that way, lo havim etai v'lei, it would be impossible to clean it, again, if you're not able to bend it in that fashion. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, we have a question on this from the following Brisa. Ketzad Osa, what does he do? Mesalkon u'manichon ba'oel u'mekanchon b'svug v'nosin b'han shem, and it says he removes them. It's talking about the neiros of the menorah. He removes them and he places them in the oil and he wipes them down and he puts in oil u'madlikon and he lights them. And so therefore it seems from this Brisa that in fact the neiros of the menorah were able to be removed from the menorah. And the Gemara continues and answers, Hu da amar ki haitana de Tanya, he follows the Tana of the following Brisa, meaning the statement that we had earlier from Rav Sheshes, that it's all, even the neiros, are all part of 1 solid block of gold, follows the opinion in the following Brisa. The Chachamim say, Lo hayu mizizin osam mimakom, where they did not move it from its place. Now what does it mean they did not move it from its place? Mechlal di boile leuzoza motzi mazizla, does that imply that if it needed to be moved, it would be moved? That's not what it means. Ela ema, rather it means to say, Lo hayu brisa, zazam imakom. It wasn't able to be moved. It was all, including the neiros, it was all one solid block of gold. And the Gemara continues, Uman chacham. Now, who are these chachamim that say it's all one solid block of gold, including the neiros of the menorah? Rebbe Lazar, it's Rebbe Lazar. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Rebbe Lazar, Rebbe Tzadok Omer, Rebbe Lazar, Rebbe Tzadok says, Kimintas shel zav hayala al gaba, kashu mativa dochko klape pion, kashu nosein bashemen, dochko klape rosha. There was something similar to a golden plate on top of each lamp. When one would clean out a lamp, he would push the golden plate toward its mouth. When he would put oil in the lamp, he would push the golden plate back toward its head. And so therefore you see that the ner, the lamp of the menorah, was not something that was removed. And Rashi Ksaviat explains, Ner shel mikdash, neiros shel menorah, the lamps of the menorah, shebehen nosden es Hashem and v'apsila, in those lamps, that's where the oil and the wicks are placed. Shel prakim, it was shel prakim. And Rashi Ksaviat says shel chulyas. Now shel chulyas would really mean it's of different parts, but that's not what it means, says Rashi. Lo shel chulyas mamish. It doesn't mean it's really shel chulyas, sheyuchal leparkan, or lesalkan min menorah, that you can remove them from the menorah. Ela sheyachol lechovva lemat, it simply means that it's flexible, you can bend it downward, or lezokva b'makom, and then stand it up straight. And Kosavar, he holds kiksiv kikoru miksha, when it says in the pasuk kikoru miksha, the mashma, all of that implies mechaticha achas yasa akol, that it's all made from one solid block of pure gold. A menorah vinerosa, that's going on the menorah itself and the lamps of the menorah. Haneros heim mechuborim ba meosa chaticha atzma, the lamps also were attached from the same solid piece of gold. Vein yachol esalkan b'shas hatava, you cannot remove them at the time of the cleaning, likro fasadeshen, in order to take out the ashes. Now, if it wasn't flexible, if you couldn't bend it, it wouldn't be able to be cleaned. Misalkan, and so then we quoted the brisa, he's misalkan l'neiros min ha-menorah, he removes the lamps from the menorah according to the brisa, umanichon ba'oel b'mikdash, and then places them in the oel is the tent, it refers to the mikdash, umekanchan b'sfug, and then he wipes them with a sponge. Alma, we see, miksha lava neiros ka, you see from here that the miksha, the fact that it's solid gold, is not going on the lamps. The einbos meosa chaticha, they don't come from the same solid block of gold. V'yachol esalkan, and one is able to remove them. And then the Gemara brought a brisa with the opinion of the Chachamim, and initially the Gemara asks, Motzi Moz's law, is this brisa implying that one could remove the lamps of the menorah? Bitmia, this is a question. V'havim Motzi Moz's law, the brisa means to say that one could move it. So amai lo havim Moz's law, lekancha yafa yafa, why not remove it in order to wipe it down properly? Elaima, rather what that brisa is saying is lo haisazaz, it wasn't able to be moved. Shein yachol esalka, that again one was not able to remove it. And the Gemara continues, Uvepluksa dahani tanoi. This machlokas is actually the same machlokas tanoim that we find in the brisa as follows. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, menorah vinei roseh bos min hakikor. According to the first opinion, the menorah and the lamps of the menorah, they came from the kikor, from that talent of gold, one solid block of gold. Vein malkachem machtoseh min hakikor. But the tongs and the scoops that were used with the menorah, they were not from that same solid block of gold. Reb Nechemia says, menorah haisaba min hakikor velo neiroseh umalkoseh machtoseh bos min hakikor. According to Reb Nechemia, the menorah itself came from the kikor of gold, from that one solid block, but the neiros, the lamps, and then also the tongs and the scoops, they did not come from the kikor. And the Gemara says, b'mai kamiflagi, what are they arguing about? What is at the root of their machlokes? B'haikra, they're arguing in the following pasuk. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Kikar Zohav Tar Yasa Osa, it says in the pasuk, it's made from a Kikar Zohav. Lamanu lemenorah Shabah Min HaKikar, that teaches that the menorah came from this Kikar of gold. Minayin Larabos Neiroseh. So now from where do we know that that includes the lamps? Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, as Kol HaKelim Ha'ela, it says as Kol HaKelim Ha'ela, so that is an inclusion of the lamps. Yochol Shanimar Ba'af Malkochel Machtoseh. Now one might think that I should include the tongs and the scoops as well. Talmud Lomer Osa, it says in the pasuk Osa it, and that is an exclusion. Divrei Reb Nechemia. These are the words of Reb Nechemia. Now the Gemara immediately notes Kasher Reb Nechemia ad Reb Nechemia. Now that's a contradiction within Reb Nechemia, because Reb Nechemia in the previous brisa said that the neiros, the lamps, don't come from the kikar, and here Reb Nechemia is saying that the lamps, the neiros, do come from the kikar. And the Gemara on that says Trei Tanoi v'alibud Reb Nechemia. That's just a machlokas Tanoim in terms of what Reb Nechemia holds. And the brisa continues. Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha Omer. Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha says menorah ba min hakikar. The menorah comes from the kikor of gold. Ve'ein malkachem machtoseh v'neiroseha ba min hakikor, but the tongs and the scoops and the lamps, they do not come from that kikor of gold. Now, what do I do according to Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha with the pasuk of Eskol hakelim ha'ela, shayu kelim shel zav? That simply means that the vessels, they were made out of gold. And that means to say that the lamps and the scoops and the tongs, even though they didn't come from that kikor of gold, but they did come from pure gold. But the Gemara continues and asks, Zav, it's teaching us gold. Behed yaksibo, there's an explicit pasuk that says that. We don't need an inclusion for that. It says in the pasuk, V'asisa es neiroseh shiva. It says that you're going to make the neiros, you're going to make the lamps, 7 of them. V'helo es neiroseh v'heir alever paneh u'malkocheh u'machtoseh zav tar. It says at the end of the pasuk that they're going to be zav tar, they're going to be pure gold, also with regards to the scoops and the tongs. And the Gemara continues and answers to that, lo no nitzrucha, it's necessary, we need the inclusion for the following, ela lefi neiros, we need it for the mouth of the neiros of the lamps. One might have thought, since the mouth of the lamps of the menorah, they become blackened, and so therefore what's the point of using pure gold? The Torah is concerned for the money of Israel, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Peites Amud Aleph.